Hello, and welcome once again to Bible Talk with Bruce and Becky. Those of you who pay close attention will have noticed we're still running a little more time between episodes. This time because my wife left me and ran off to Indiana with her sisters for a family reunion. But as you can see, she's back now, and we're ready to continue with our study of Genesis. You may be asking, will this study of Genesis never end? Well, maybe, maybe not. We'll see. We're in chapter 31. Jacob is finally fed up and has had enough with his father-in-law Laban. As I mentioned before, these two are a real match for each other. They're both conniving and dishonest and try to get the upper hand. So, as they say, what goes around comes around, and that's true for Jacob in this case. But let's begin chapter 31, and I'll read the first 16 verses. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has gained all this wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, and all the flock bore spotted, and if he said, the striped shall be your wages, and all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see, all the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land, and return to the land of your kindred. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion of inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. Years before, Jacob, on the way to Padan Aram, had paused at a place that he named Bethel. Those who follow the text closely will know that Bethel is given that name 3 or 4 different times. So it means the house of God. God appeared in a special way at Bethel. And Jacob made a vow to God. If you will watch over me in the land where I'm going and help me to prosper, then I will serve you. In fact, the question occurs to me in this passage, did Jacob believe there was only one God?
His wives certainly didn't.
No, they didn't. How do you know that?
Because when they left, they took all their little gods with them.
Right. And notice that Jacob refers to Laban's God and to the God of Jacob's fathers. He doesn't say the God of my fathers is the only one. It may be that he was a henotheist. Can you define henotheist for us?
Not between here and Christmas.
It means someone who worships chickens.
N-
Henotheist? No, it doesn't. It means somebody who believes there may be many gods, but worships only one.
Ah.
In fact, we're not sure all the way through the Old Testament, at least up until the captivity, how monotheistic Israel was. You'll notice they're constantly setting up idols and worshiping other gods. And at times they are surprised to find God in other places like Egypt or here Padan Aram, the land between the rivers. Israel eventually becomes the worshippers of only one God and believes in only one God, but I believe it takes some time and experiences for them to get there.
Um, when God talks to them, there aren't any other gods talking to them.
Not directly, but you remember that Laban in our last episode said that he had learned by divination some things. Divination means seeking to contact spirits of some kind. So these people are not strict in their obedience to Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob. But that's just a side note that occurs to me as I read through this episode. Jacob certainly made a vow to Yahweh, the God of his fathers, and is going to serve him. Well, the family has turned on one another. Jacob's cousins are accusing him of enriching himself at their father's expense. And Rachel and Leah have said that their father has taken the bride price that was given to them and kept it for himself. So they're all fed up with each other and they're about to part ways. But Jacob is going to try to do it sneakily as befits his nature. Becky, will you please read a rather long passage, 17 through 32?
So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan, to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob tricked Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him that he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him and pursued him for 7 days and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done, that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives? Why did you flee secretly and trick me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs and tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' And now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. The presence of your kinsmen point out what I have that is yours, and take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. Ta-da.
Dun, dun. the plot done thickens here. Rachel has taken what are called the teraphim, a plural word that is usually translated household gods in English versions. And like many other things from ancient times, we don't know exactly what these things were. They're not very large because Leah is able to hide them under a saddle.
Rachel.
Rachel, what did I say?
Leah.
Rachel, Leah, all the same. No, not really. Rachel took them and hid them. They may be one way that Laban used divination, a way to contact the spirits. Some sort of small idols, apparently, that they believe brought protection and favor to their house. And Rachel is not enough of a worshiper of Yahweh alone to leave them behind. And already they are causing problems. Laban accuses Jacob of being a trickster, which he certainly is. And Jacob says he was afraid of what Laban might do, and he might keep his daughters from going with Jacob. And Laban says, I don't think altogether disingenuously, what he says about, I would like to have a big celebration and send you off the right way. He's not entirely honest there. But the story continues, and I will read now from 33 to 42. We're in Genesis chapter 31, for those of you just tuning in. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them. That is the teraphim that he's looking for. He went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods, put them in the camel's saddle, and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. She said to her father, Let not my lord be angry, that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me. So he searched, but did not find the household gods. This translation uses a euphemistic way of expressing this. I believe the NIV says that straightforwardly that she was having her period. That's what she means by the way of women. And so she uses that as an excuse not to stand up and let her father search under the camel's saddle. Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Self-righteousness appears partly through his ignorance. Jacob said to Laban, What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household gods or goods? Set it here before me, before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I've been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was, by day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I've been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night. Would you say Jacob has a lot of pent-up resentment toward his father-in-law?
20 years is a lot of time, a lot of resentment.
And it all comes forth here. All the hardship he's had in serving Laban and even to his own loss. Notice he describes God as the God of his father. And he uses an unusual expression, the God of Abraham and the fear of
I
Isaac.
wanted to ask about that.
Ask away.
Um, so that is a description of God, the fear of Isaac.
It is. I need to quit bumping that computer. It's the way possibly Isaac himself described God. But I can't say much about it because this is a unique usage here. Uh, but it tells us a little insight into how they viewed God. They don't say much about loving God in the book of Genesis. They talk about serving Him and obeying Him and having a covenant with Him and believing His promises. But they seem to have had more of an awe, a reverence, or even a fear of this God that they didn't know a whole lot about. We may forget at times that they hadn't read the Bible. It wasn't written in their time, and so they didn't know nearly as much about God as we do through His revelation. They only knew from His rare appearances, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in human form. But Jacob feels that he's entirely in the right, and he rebukes his father-in-law for his mistreatment.
So this is somewhat a history of religion.
In some ways, yes.
It's almost anthropological
Hey,
or sociological.
you think there's sociology in the Bible?
Yeah.
How about anthropomorphism,
Uh, uh,
where God is described as in human terms?
oh, okay.
Some of that in there too. Yeah, it doesn't cover all the religions of humankind, but it shows how even among the descendants of Abraham there was a learning process as to what God was like and what He wanted from us and how He should be served. But one thing we've learned so far is He expects obedience and faithfulness to a covenant that's made with Him. He will always be faithful on His part, and He expects humans as well to be faithful, but there's always grace, even in Genesis. And He is able to forgive and overlook some of their misgivings and missteps. And He is faithful to the covenant, He will say more than once as you go through the Old Testament, because of Abraham's faithfulness. We don't receive righteousness from Abraham, but certainly we are blessed as they were because he was faithful to his covenant with God. All right, anything more to say before we read on to the end of the chapter?
It's it's a little bewildering to think that this thing that we practice, this Christianity that we practice, is a series of historical steps that God took with us to get us here.
What did you find bewildering?
It just hit me that God is a great big thing, and He had to be eaten in chunks, I guess. He just
This is
like
interesting theological
like
development here.
trying to clean the elephant. Somebody thinks it's a tree trunk, and somebody thinks it's a snake, and
And how do you eat an elephant?
one bite at
At
a
a
time.
time, yeah. Well, God is revealing Himself as they are able to understand. We would say these people were quite primitive in some ways, sociologically speaking,
But
but
that they all accepted the fact that there's something bigger and greater than themselves.
they did, which shows that their brains are working. Uh, I think the Bible is clear, especially when you get to Romans, for example, that God has not left Himself without witness, there's plenty of evidence to be seen of a creator and of his purpose in history. Well, shall we move on and conclude for today?
We shall.
Please read verse 43 to the end of the chapter.
Okie dokie. I think my eyes are giving me trouble. Okay.
Hmm.
When Laban answered and said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day for these my daughters, or for their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Gather stones." And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it
Yegar Sahadutha.
It's easy for you to say. But Jacob called it Gilead. I'm with Jacob.
No, not Gilead.
Galilee.
Galeed.
Gilead. Okay, Gilead. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." Therefore he named it Gilead and Mizpah, for he said, "The Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me." Then Laban said to Jacob, "See this heap and this pillar, which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me to do harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. Kind of sad.
It's at least has a touch of melancholy, I would say. And he is seeing his daughters and his grandchildren for the last time, apparently. Notice his claim that all of these are actually his.
Yeah.
He's the patriarch of the clan, and probably under the laws that they had at that time, they would belong to him. But he's letting them go with Jacob.
I think it's also interesting that he is saying that God sees us. Even when you're far away, he's going to see both of us. And that's kind of a different concept than some of them thought, that God was restricted to certain areas.
Right. He does believe God is able to judge them even though they're far apart, and he knows what's going on. Laban in Aramaic, which was the language he spoke, names this heap of stones Yagar Sahadusa, which means in Aramaic heap of witness, and Jacob calls it Galeed, which means in Hebrew heap of witness. And Laban also calls it Mizpah, watchpost or watchtower, because God will be watching to see what they do. But notice that in making this covenant, they call on a higher power. They call on God to witness this between them and to hold them to their covenants that they have made. But Jacob and Laban make up with each other as much as they're able, and they make a covenant, an agreement, contract. In a sense, they are making a border between them, so that Laban and his people would stay on one side, and they'll take their territory on the other. Well, anything else you want to comment in this story?
Having just left my family and all of my cousins and so forth, just makes me remember how much partying can hurt.
Yep. Parting can be sad, But if we have something good to look forward to, as Christians do, then we have hope, no matter how we may part.
And I'm sure there are uh, some people in that group that I will never see again.
Quite possible. Some of them are getting older. You probably noticed that. But you look the same as ever. Well, we're going to wrap it up for this time. Next time, we're coming to the end of Jacob's life, and we'll move on to some of his descendants. But until then, remember, don't send money. Bye bye, and God bless.